Hey everybody, we are back. Sorry we had to continue the video. It was running a little bit long. For those of you who are new to our channel, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, I'm Brock Davidson of Brock's Performance. What are we doing? Well, I had just taken the Ego for a ride and my brain was just sort of spinning. So we stopped the last video so that I could regain my composure and think about what happened. But if you listen to any of the giggling or the hooting and hollering, to say that I had a ball on my first ride on this motorcycle is an absolute understatement. It is fun. Very, very fun. So first of all, I would like to thank all of the people who put on some amazing comments. The negative comments, there were a few guys that wanted to push the limit, saying stuff that they knew they'd get banned for, so I went ahead and obliged them. But there weren't that many, which is really cool. The thing that sort of surprised me though was how many positive comments there were. People wanting to know more about the bike, more about can we get more performance out of it. You know, Brock, can you do the things that you did with a sport bike to this motorcycle? And I got to tell you, I don't know yet, but that's definitely what I'm planning on finding out throughout the course of this project. Second of all, and this really blew me away, especially in my neighborhood, you're not going to get a lot of positivity when it comes to electric vehicles. You go to California, you see Teslas all the time, and I'm in Ohio. I'm seeing more Teslas, but you just don't see that many of them. There's not a big push for electric vehicles or low emissions vehicles in our particular area, although I am seeing more of them. But one of the things that really blew me away is how many people really give a damn about what we're doing here. And to sort of put that into perspective for you, on any given month, we're going to pick up a couple hundred subscribers. You know, on a good month, we'll pick up 300. By the time this is edited and out to you guys, by the time you see this, we will probably have picked up around 10,000 new subscribers. So to say that whether there's a big question about EVs in my particular neighborhood, obviously the rest of the world wants to know, and that's why we're here. So anyway, I know you guys don't like it when I talk. Unfortunately, to get the message across, I have to do that. So just give me a couple minutes here. I had mentioned how we set the bike up to be able to test it on the dyno. I want to show you guys how you can do that for yourself if you go to your local dyno operator, because I promise you, it's not going to have any idea how to hook this bike up and get power readings. But anyway, let me show you that right now. All right, for those of you who have a dyno, we have a DynoJet Model 250i. I'm going to use that as our example. Some of the problems that you have with the electric bikes are, where do you pick up an RPM signal? You can't put it on a spark plug. They don't have that. This bike does have OBD2, but unfortunately, DynoJet's ODB2 and this bike don't talk, so I can't get the RPM readings from that. So then, what are my options? Well, DynoJet has an option that very few people know about, very few people know how to use it. But if you can't get a good RPM signal, or your RPM signal is so erratic you can't get good measurements, they've got a way for you to go in and use the drum speed, which is going to create drum RPM, and match the drum RPM to the bike's RPM. But what you're going to need to do is make some calculations so that they match. So let me show you what I mean. If I came up with my own little screen here, I mean, what do you need to know about power, torque? Torque is what we're really trying to find here. So basically when you go in, if ordinarily you would use your inductive probe or OBD2 or plug it into your power commander, now you can't do that. There's this little button or a little area here that says gear ratio. Well, what this is basically saying is you've got RPM divided by mile per hour. So the gear ratio that I painstakingly came up with is 74.80, and the whole idea behind that is to get the dyno engine RPM to match the actual engine RPM on the bike. Now, it has an OBD2 plug right here underneath this, and I was able to plug just a little cheap handheld in there, and that gave me engine RPM when I was running it on the dyno. Well, I can tell you that from using that handheld, what was on my handheld and the engine RPM on the screen were absolutely identical. So sometimes you get a little optimistic RPMs versus speed. On this particular bike, it was dead on. So what that told me was all I need to do was make sure that the engine RPM, if you could come over here and see it. Sorry, I know it's a little tough. The engine RPM right now obviously is at 0 because we're not moving. That RPM, if that RPM matches the dyno RPM, then we are calibrated, and that's how we can come up with torque and horsepower without actually getting a reading. Now, the thing that's pretty fun about this bike is it's really easy to do because the cruise control works so consistently well. Let me show you what I mean by that. Now, I'm not going to go through all the buttons that I got to push. That's in the first one to get the bike dyno ready, turning off the ABS, turning off the traction control, and all those things. But what I'm going to do is basically get it going, and then I'm going to click the cruise control, and I'm going to show you how the engine RPM matches the RPM on the dyno. So let's do that right now. All right, guys, I'm just going to simulate cruising down the road. Let's pick somewhere around 50 miles an hour. It doesn't really matter, but all I'm going to do is get the bike going. Close enough to what we're doing. We've got 36, 58, 55, right around in there. That's pretty good. Now, I want you to notice something. Watch the cruising range go up. Okay, just to try to clarify something here. When I first put this on with a 97% charge, it said I had a cruising range of 61 miles before I needed another charge. Well, it knows that I've been riding the bike like a madman. So just setting the cruise at 50 miles an hour with no load, so it's not realistic as to what you would be doing going down the road because you'd have a lot more load on your body. But the cruising range now has gone all the way up to 242 miles. It just goes to show you that it tries to calculate the cruising range from your riding style. So if you're worried about your range, the best thing to do is not get the damn thing wide open all the time, which is very hard to do because that is fun. All right, I hope you're learning something because I certainly am. What I wanted to do when I was going on my ride, I said that I would pull up some dyno charts to compare the Energica with some other bikes that have been on our dyno. Now, due to some unfortunate circumstances, a lot of the bikes we had in the past weren't available with this version of our software, so I'm going to do the best I can. So when you think of torque, most people think Harley Davidson, and they're right, Harleys make a lot of torque. But right now, if I had to pick a cruiser that made a tremendous amount of torque and really good horsepower, the Indian Challenger is pretty hard to beat, and we just happen to have one of those on the dyno. Now I'm going to go ahead and leave the horsepower out of this so I don't clutter things up, but this Indian Challenger made 120 foot-pounds of torque. That's very substantial. That's what your ass dyno feels. When you get into gas and you feel that scoot, torque's what does it for you. Okay, Challenger. Yeah, but is that really a fast bike? What would we consider fast? Well, I also have a ZX14 up here that has had what we call super sport mods. The head's been milled, cam's degreed, it's on MR12, has a sidewinder pipe. Real fast motorcycle. It's a street race bike. Let me go ahead and pull it up for you real quick. And you can see here, the ZX14, definitely no joke, at 125 foot-pounds of torque. Now, what next? What can even come close to that? Well, I started thinking, I was like, you know, I've got an FXR that has an S&S 124 motor. If you're a Harley guy, you may understand what I'm talking about. If you're a sport bike guy, who gives a shit? But let me show you what we got. My personal FXR is definitely no slouch with 138 foot-pounds of torque. That bike is a ball to ride. Same deal. You hit the gas, off you go. All right, well, now let's just get serious. Let's talk about a tremendous amount of torque. I have a friend with a Grudge Hayabusa. He'd get mad if I let anybody know who it was. But he's got stroker crank. This is a normally aspirated application. It's a 7-second Grudge bike, so it is the real deal. He's got a stroker crank. He's got big press pistons, big compression. Well, a bike like that runs into 7, what kind of torque does it have? Let me just go ahead and pull that up for you here. Boom, look at that. 150 foot-pounds of torque. Now, can you street ride that bike? No, you can't even ride it back from the end of the racetrack. So when you talk about range, if you can't ride your bike back from the end of a quarter-mile pass, you don't have any range. But what you do have is a damn fast motorcycle. Now, let's talk about this new technology. Love it or hate it, there is no doubt that it is no joke when it comes to making power and making torque. So let me just go ahead and show you the run we made on the Energica right before we went on our ride. And what do we get? Boom. Look at this. Wow. Even against a big motor Busa, there's just no comparison in torque. It's absolutely amazing. So while you may hate it, I think it's pretty cool, because when I look at this dyno sheet, you know what I see? I see potential, because you can see the torque. It's instant torque. It comes right now, but then it just falls off, falls off, falls off. So the big question is, and we have a lot of bikes these days that try to pass the new emissions and noise regs. Man, you get them off the showroom floor and they run like a scalded dog, and then they just go, the Ninja H2. That's got to be the best example of a motorcycle that has just really been neutered. And when you get it de-restricted, it is an absolute beast. It's no joke. Unrestricted, just like this one, is no joke. But listen, I'm going to get me some water. I managed to mess my throat up here, yelling over all this this quiet noise that the electric bike makes. But I want to go ahead and just address some of the comments from our last video. I want to spend the whole time talking, try and make this short before we get into some real fun the next time out. But I'll be right back after I get some questions and get me some water. All right. I know YouTube is all about the video and looking at stuff and excitement and not so much talking. I get it. But listen, guys, you are really selling yourself short. If you really want to learn about something, go through the comments of these videos, because we've got some really, really intelligent people watching us, and we've got some that aren't. It's okay. That's what the world's about, right? So I want to address some of the comments that I thought were worth answering, and you'll notice a lot of the questions that come up in the comment sections are answered, and usually they're answered by me. The only time they won't be is if I'm out of town or something, but I still tell whoever is doing it what the correct answer is. So when you see a comment answered, a reply, it's me. Well, I want to take some of these that I honestly didn't know the answer to it and just sort of address it here. First of all, there was a gentleman who came on who's obviously very, very bright. He said, given the relationship between E-cell output and temperature, I would expect at least a temperature correction factor on the dyno. And it says, see the Nernst equation. I ain't no mathlete, right? But I looked up the Nernst equation, and I also got with DynoJet. And I said, hey guys, does this make any sense to you? And they said, well, our correction factors are for internal combustion engines to correct for atmospheric conditions. And there's a whole lot of funky symbols and things going on when you look up this Nernst equation. But one of the things that we did notice was in cooler ambient temperatures, the bike made about 10 horsepower less than in warmer temperatures, which I touched on previously. But that's not a function of the atmospheric conditions. It's the function of how the battery works versus ambient temperature. And the best way I can explain it, being a motorhead guy, is if my nitrous bottle is too cold, I'm not going to make as much power as if my nitrous bottle is at a warmer ambient temperature. And these things do something very, very similar. I would imagine in the future, DynoJet will address this if people really want to know how much they're losing because of conditions. But for right now, uncorrected seems to be the way to go, and that's the way we're going to continue on. I made a mistake, and thank you for correcting me, because if I don't get corrected, then I'll continue on looking like a dipshit to the people who know the difference. This bike, and I sent an email into Energica, and I haven't received a response yet, so I did a little bit of an internet search. This is not a DC motor. This is an AC brushless motor. Now, I know the bike has an inverter, but I couldn't confirm from Energica, but it looks like that's what they've been doing for these particular motors. My question is, why AC versus DC? I don't know the answer, and hopefully I'll get a reply back from them, and I'll relay that information on to you. Now, if you've been paying attention, you've been hearing a little click, click, click behind me. Just in an attempt to go out there, because you know when rumors get spread, especially these days with the internet, it can be really detrimental. So we had one gentleman write, do you try to use an EMF tester, parentheses, electromagnetic field, question mark, because the battery on electric car literally give huge radiation to the people driving it all the way long. All right. So, radiation. I do not have an EMF tester. I'm imagining when he says electromagnetic field, he means the field that happens when you have current traveling through a wire. You can wrap it up, you get a field. That's why I don't like getting near power lines. Makes your hair fall out. Get it? What I do have is a radiation detector, a Geiger counter, because doesn't everybody, right? So I want to show you something here. We've tried to let this thing sort of settle down. But right now, we're at 10 counts per minute. It'll vary up, it'll vary down. Now, oh my God, you've got radiation. I hear it clicking and it's got numbers on it. Well, they give you this really convenient card. And in my particular area, we're in Ohio, and basically in Ohio, south of Ohio, our normal count per minute is about 17 counts per minute, depending on where you are in the country. Missouri 16, Milwaukee's 12, Washington DC's 19. It's a good start. But what does that really mean? So, normal background, no action needed. Anything between 5 and 50 counts per minute is normal. Just sort of depends on where you live. You get a 51 to 99, it's medium level. You need to keep check it for regularly to make sure it doesn't go up, because if it goes up past 100, it's at a high level, and you're supposed to closely watch the reading and find out why. Anything above 1,000 is very high. Leave the area ASAP and find out why. Anything above 2,000 is extremely high, evacuate immediately and report it to the government. So I'm going to go ahead and put the bike in cruise control, and we're just going to let it sit here for a minute with the radiation detector sitting on it. We'll put it right on the seat just like it's going for a ride, and we'll let you watch that for a minute. And I want to mention something, and I know I'm sort of getting flaky here, but I want to mention something. So I'm trying to explain what 175 foot-pounds of torque means. As a general rule, turbo bikes make about half as much torque as they do horsepower, which means if you double the torque, it would be the equivalent effect of horsepower. So for a short time, this bike really does feel like it's got 350 horsepower. It is a ball. But next time, we're going to go ahead. I want to check things out a little bit more and learn some things. I want to make some adjustments like I was telling you about in the video. And then I want to take it out and see how it really does in the real world against other real motorcycles and motorcyclists. Until then, I'm Brox from Brox Performance. We're going to get our click on here. We'll see you then.